Welcome again to our winter webinar series. We are doing these every week. We're covering a wide range of fruit and vegetable topics. Here's the full list. So we've been starting with these kind of big picture, like what are some things you might consider adding to your farm? Last week, Madeline talked about adding fruit to your farm. This week, we're talking about high tunnels. And then next week, we're going to transition a bit and get into more of like the nitty-gritty in-season management. And then at the end, we'll talk about post-harvest. So that's the series for this year. And then before we start, we always like to plug our newsletter. This is the main way that we communicate with growers. We have a weekly update all summer long where we talk about what we're seeing in the field, and we post opportunities in here as well. So today we are talking about high tunnels and whether a high tunnel might be a good fit for your farm. So just to start off, this is going to be fairly surface level, really thinking about like how might a high tunnel fit into your existing system. Some of the economics of high tunnels, a little bit about construction. If you are actually interested after seeing this in getting a high tunnel, we have some much more in-depth resources as well. So actually next week, Eric Highmark from Renewing the Countryside and I are launching our 9-week high tunnel production course. So again, this is very surface level, and then there's like quite a deep dive for people who want to learn more because high tunnels are a whole different ballgame than growing in the field. And so I just want to credit some people too. Some of the slides for today are from Eric, who does this course with me, and then Emily, an educator in kind of the Western Metro, helped with some of these slides as well. So I'm Natalie Hoydel. I'm a vegetable crops educator, and I've been with Extension for about 8 years and kind of around vegetable production. My whole life worked on vegetable farms. And I will say that high tunnels really scared me for a long time. It felt like so technical. I did not want to touch high tunnels because I felt like there was such a learning curve. And after being here for like 6 years, did this 100 Farms project where we went to visit 100 high tunnels. I finally felt like I could talk about high tunnels in a way that was useful. I've built some high tunnels. I've helped growers with all kinds of issues in high tunnels. I've managed crops in high tunnels. And so, yeah, they feel like big and scary and really different from the rest of vegetable production. And I think that's a useful place to start. Not that they're scary, but just that a high tunnel is kind of a big deal to add to your farm. And it's really worth thinking about not just the economics, but the labor and your time and like how a high tunnel might really fit in with the rest of your lifestyle before just going ahead and buying one. So just a quick agenda, we're going to do a little overview of what high tunnels are, get into the economics and labor, and then we're going to kind of walk through like what a year might look like in a high tunnel. What do people grow in the different seasons? What are the challenges during those seasons, as well as the different opportunities? And we'll talk a little bit about funding as well. So I want to get a little sense of who is here. And so would you raise your hand? You can either do it with the little raise hand function, or you can say it in the chat, or you can have your video and just like wave. Would you raise your hand if you are a beginning farmer? Awesome. I got a couple people. I'm going to pull the chat up here for myself too. All right. You can put your hands down. Raise your hand now if you already have a high tunnel. Okay, Jeff's got a high tunnel. Maybe not. Great. Okay, so not a lot of people who already have high tunnels. Raise your hand if you're really considering getting a high tunnel. Great. Awesome. All right, so we've got some people who are thinking about it, and I see some people on this call too who support people in applying for high tunnels and managing high tunnels. That's great. Thank you. All right, so let's just start with defining what is a high tunnel. I get this question a lot, like what's the difference between a hoop house and a high tunnel and a greenhouse? So basically, a high tunnel is generally unheated, although we're seeing more and more people add heat to their high tunnels. Plastic covered hoop house structure that is primarily used for growing horticultural crops. And I want to specify here that those crops are grown in the ground. So not in a greenhouse with a concrete floor, but they're grown in the ground. So whereas a greenhouse, like the picture on the right, is going to have powered heating systems, plants growing in pots. Greenhouse tends to be a little bit more heavy duty, tends to have like polycarbonate plastic walls or glass walls. A high tunnel generally is unheated, generally relies on natural ventilation, though sometimes we have some extra fans. Seeds are right in the soil, and then the frames are anchored into the ground. And we have kind of a spectrum of sizes. So we have little high tunnels that are called caterpillar tunnels, up to pretty large, like I would say 30 by 96 is kind of an average size, larger high tunnel, but there's certainly bigger than that too. Um, so quite a range of sizes. They're all kind of considered high tunnels. Hoop house is just another word for a high tunnel. You can use those interchangeably. So when we look at high tunnels, not greenhouses, we have these two kind of categories. So we have smaller high tunnels that are usually called caterpillar tunnels. They tend to be quite a bit cheaper. They're easy to assemble and they're movable. Any high tunnel is in theory movable if you if you don't have the feet cemented in, but a bigger high tunnel is going to be a lot harder to move. And so caterpillar tunnels are great for really low growing crops. So if you're just growing lettuce in there, or other greens, maybe you're growing carrots and beets to get an early start on the season, you're not really utilizing that vertical space. And so a much cheaper, smaller tunnel can make sense. If you don't have stable land access, caterpillar tunnels are a great solution because they can be easily moved. They tend to be a little less sturdy. And so if you're in a spot that has a lot of wind, you generally want a bigger, sturdier tunnel. So then, and the other thing to note about this is the NRCS funding for high tunnels, which we'll talk about later, is only applicable if it's at least 8 feet tall. So if it's smaller than that, it's not really considered a high tunnel. So on the larger end, these taller, bigger high tunnels generally are a really good fit for crops that grow vertically. So tomatoes, cucumbers, things where you're really utilizing that vertical space. You really want to have as much vertical space as possible. They have better airflow. They tend to have better heat retention. So if you're really pushing into the winter seasons, the larger structures just retain heat better overnight. They're more expensive, they're harder to move, but they tend to be a lot more structurally sound as well. And we'll get into this, but there's a whole range of quality, even with the bigger high tunnels. Carl, are you raising your hand with a question? You're muted.
I hit the button twice. Yeah, hi, thank you. I do believe it's 6 feet minimum for NRCS funding.
Oh, okay, that's good to know.
Yeah,
I will double check that.
and that would be at
Um,
the
if that
peak.
has changed. Okay, I'll double check that and like
Okay.
send a confirmation. Thanks. All right, so just to kind of give a sense of the scope of how important high tunnels have become since 2010. So in 2010, the Natural Resource Conservation Service made high tunnels like an official um, conservation practice. And they have invested $259 million into the construction of high tunnels. They have funded over 1,000 high tunnels in Minnesota since 2010. Last year, they funded 150 or so. We're seeing anywhere from like 100 to a little bit more than that every year. And so high tunnels have really become like a staple of small farms. And so let's start with why we should grow in high tunnels. And then we'll talk about why we maybe shouldn't grow in high tunnels, why it might not be a good fit for you. So the most obvious reason to grow in a high tunnel is for season extension. We have a short growing season in Minnesota. That growing season is getting longer with climate change, but we still have this kind of unpredictable um, seasons where, like, even if the growing season is generally getting longer, we're having warmer, longer springs, warmer, longer falls, we can still get a hard frost in those time periods that's unpredictable. And so tunnels really allow us to kind of take advantage of that extended season, um, which also allows us to like spread out our labor a little bit throughout the season. We see higher yields and less space. So if you don't have a lot of land, but you do have some time or access to labor, people who are really successful at growing in high tunnels say that they can grow the same amount of tomatoes in a 30 by 96-foot high tunnel as they can grow in an entire acre outside. And so it's a way to produce a lot of food in a small space. We can also grow things in high tunnels that just don't grow well in Minnesota because it's too cold. So we've seen growers have a lot of success with crops like ginger or turmeric, sweet potatoes, things that just like a little bit more heat than our Minnesota summers provide. We also see quite quite a bit of risk management when we use high tunnels. So when it's super rainy outside and you can't get into the field, you can still get into your high tunnel. So you're not losing like a day of work. When we have late springs or really rainy springs, like we've had for the past couple of years, a high tunnel can allow us to like get some things planted in the ground quite a bit earlier. A lot of our diseases in Minnesota, our plant diseases, are spread via rainwater when it splashes on the surface or when it's like moving pathogens across the field. And so when we don't have overhead irrigation, we see less disease pressure. We see some different diseases in high tunnels that are still challenging. Um, but in all those ways, it helps us to reduce risk a little bit. And then sometimes, if you plan well, your labor and income can be much more distributed throughout the year. You're not doing all of your farming in 3 to 4 months. It's more spread out over like 6 to 7 months in some cases. That said, if you plan poorly and you're only growing tomatoes in your high tunnel, it can mean way more labor at the busiest time of the season. But if we're really leaning into those shoulder seasons, it's a way to spread your labor. So why not high tunnels? Why might this not be a good fit? And actually, it looks like, okay, Russell, who also works for NRCS, verified what Carl said. So thank you. If it has to be 6 feet tall for NRCS funding. All right, so why not high tunnels? High tunnels are a ton of work, especially if you're growing like trellised crops like this. Take a look at this picture. There is a ton of effort that went into this. So just like the soil prep and the planting. But this farmer was out at least once a week pruning and trellising these tomatoes. Um, they mulched the soil pretty heavily, and now they're out there every single day harvesting those tomatoes. They are dealing with ventilation for like 15 to 30 minutes a day. If it's not automated, if it is automated, they've invested a couple $1,000s probably into that automated ventilation system. But they're out there making sure the vents are open and closing at the right times. The sides are going up and down at the right times so that things don't get too hot or too cold in there. So it's a lot of work. I tend to think like people either have or you're very unlikely to have like a lot of time on your hands and a lot of land. Um, if you happen to have time on your hands and very limited land, a high tunnel is a great fit because it is a lot of work, but you can grow a lot on a small scale. If you have more land but less time, growing something outdoors might be a better fit than growing in a high tunnel. High tunnels are expensive. Thankfully, we've got some really good programs, which we'll talk about at the end, that can help fund the cost of a high tunnel, but there are some ongoing costs as well. Difficult management, it's really a whole new skill set to grow on a high tunnel compared to an open field, especially if you're growing those crops that require pruning and trellising and dealing with humidity management, new diseases. So you really have to be kind of committed to learning a whole new skill set. Ideally, you would live on site. So if your farm is like 20, 30 more minutes away from where you live, it might not be a good fit because you really have to be there every day to make sure that like things are going well in your high tunnel, that you're getting the sides up and down at the right time, that like you're watering on time just because it can get so hot in a high tunnel that if you're not there daily taking care of it, um, your crops can get damaged, especially in the middle of the summer. I think it is possible to diversify too much. I think if you've got a lot going on, um, a high tunnel can just be like one too many things sometimes. And then if you're not planning really well, a high tunnel like this is going to require a lot of your time right in the middle of the summer. So again, these people are out harvesting their tomatoes every single day. They're pruning and trellising regularly, right in the middle of the summer when the rest of the farm is really busy too. And so you really want to be thinking about kind of the flow of your labor throughout the season and choosing your crops accordingly and just like making sure that that is going to work for you. And then finally, you want to make sure you have a good site for a high tunnel. Um, you want to have access to irrigation. You want your tunnel to have like pretty good protection from the wind, although a little bit of wind is good for ventilation. Um, a fairly flat surface, good soil that drains pretty well. You want to have sunlight for most of the day, easy access to roads. Um, you want to make sure, again, that that soil drains, that you're not like at the bottom of a valley where water is pooling. And ideally, you can grow in a high tunnel without electricity, but electricity can really help. And this page on the screen is from a guide that we're going to send you all at the end. So don't feel like you have to write all this down. All right, so that was kind of a high level overview of thinking about whether a tunnel might be a good fit for your farm. And now I'm going to talk more specifically about high tunnel economics. So just the upfront cost of a high tunnel is really, really variable. So it's hard to give you an exact number. Um, a caterpillar tunnel, so those are the tunnels that are like 6 to 10 feet tall. They tend to be like 20 to 50 feet long. Those are going to range from anywhere from $1,500 to $3,500, whereas a full-size high tunnel could be anywhere from $6,000 to $12,000, and that doesn't include labor. That's just the materials costs. And the price will depend on the size, if you're going to do Gothic versus a classic. So this caterpillar tunnel here is a classic shape. It's just got the rounded roof. The Gothic is a bit pointed. So that really helps in Minnesota with shedding snow from the roof of the tunnel. If you have a big, just round roof high tunnel, you're going to spend a lot of time in a year like this, like raking snow off the top of your tunnel so it doesn't collapse. The spacing. So you've got steel bows going all the way down the tunnel that help support it. And you can buy a tunnel that has like 4 foot spacing, 5 foot spacing, or 6 foot. So the fewer of those you have, the cheaper it's going to be, but the less like sturdy the structure is going to be as well. The gauge of steel. So again, that's just like how much steel is going into that tunnel, how strong is it going to be, how much extra bracing. You can buy extra wind bracing, and then roof reinforcement. So if you're going to be hanging tomatoes from the ceiling, like you can see in the tunnel on the right, there's a lot more steel that goes into that roof structure than something as simple as the tunnel on the left here. So quite a range of prices depending on what you're going to do with that tunnel. I tend to suggest in Minnesota, where we have a lot of snow, we tend to have strong winds, we have a lot of weather happening here, to buy the sturdiest tunnel for what you need. So generally having more bows, so tighter spacing between them, is a good thing. And then if you're not going to grow tomatoes or cucumbers in your tunnel, you don't need that really reinforced roof for trellising. But if you are, you need that. And then there are some other cool features that will cost more. So this tunnel on the right is actually a movable high tunnel from 10th Street Farm in Afton. So it's on I'm gonna forget the language here, but it's on like skids, and so it moves across those skids, and it can be in three locations, and that really helps with crop rotation, soil health. Um, Most people don't have that, but that's like a really cool kind of fancy high tunnel that's going to cost a little more than a standard high tunnel. All right. So Andrew Hansen Pierre is someone that I work with quite a bit. He's a farmer from Clover Bee Farm, and he's also a builder who builds high tunnels for people. So Andrew has built dozens of high tunnels. He helps out in our class with some of the building stuff and just has given some, just advises farmers on high tunnel construction. So he shared with me just a few comparisons um, of local high tunnel companies in Minnesota and some considerations. So, actually, sorry, these are not in Minnesota. None of these companies are in Minnesota, but they're all Midwestern companies that farmers in Minnesota frequently buy high tunnels from. So, Zimmerman's sells in this 30 by 72 size, probably the most expensive tunnel. And these prices are higher than what's shown on their website just because they're considering like the end walls and the extras that you need to add. So these are Andrew's kind of rough estimates of when all the pieces come together. So about $10,000. It's going to take 1 to 2 people with some skill, about 70 to 90 hours to build. Nolts in Iowa is a little cheaper. It's going to take a little less time to build because it's a little less complicated. Farmer's Friend, quite a bit cheaper, less time to build. And what the trade-off is here is like the quality and durability of that Zimmerman tunnel, in at least in Andrew's opinion, is significantly higher. It's going to last longer. It's going to withstand heavy winds. But that Farmer's Friend tunnel is going to be a lot easier to build if you don't feel like you have the skill set, if you can't find someone to hire to put that tunnel together. So different considerations. These tunnels are all good tunnels that are right for somebody. There's no like one size fits all, unfortunately. I've got a couple of companies here that people typically buy from around the Midwest. This is also in that guide that you're going to get at the end of the webinar today. And then just some insights. So Renewing the Countryside led a project a couple of years ago that was really about skill building around building high tunnels. And so we like had a team of volunteers that Andrew mostly led. And we built a bunch of high tunnels around Minnesota together and just kind of learned from that process. We found that if you could get a crew together of 8 to 10 people, if you've got one skilled builder in the group who could do a little bit of prep work, we could basically get a high tunnel up in a weekend. But if you're doing it by yourself or just with a friend, it's going to take you many weekends to get your high tunnel together. So that's back to those numbers, like 70 to 90 hours, maybe 40 to 50 for the easier to assemble tunnels. And then once it's built, we want to think about daily management as well. So this is a graph from a study that I was a part of with Cheng-Yan Yu, who's a professor of horticultural economics at the U of M, Ryan Pesch, who many of you probably know, is an extension educator, and then 2 grad students, where we came up with enterprise budgets for 6 to 8 different specialty crops. And this was really with the mindset of farm to school and like trying to recommend crops that would be profitable to farmers. But what we did in this project was we looked at not just the cost of producing these crops from like an inputs perspective and revenue perspective, but how much labor did it require to grow these different crops. And so for 1,000 square feet, you can see there's a huge difference in the amount of labor that it took to grow high tunnel cherry tomatoes and high tunnel cucumbers compared to crops that are growing in the field. So maybe like, if I'm interpreting these numbers correctly, like 7 to 8 hours total to grow a winter squash crop compared to like over 100 hours to grow a high tunnel cherry tomato crop. And when we look at profitability, so we in this project looked at profit or just total revenue per 1,000 square feet. The things that are obvious that have a high sticker price, like cherry tomatoes, came out to have a lot higher revenue than something like winter squash or onions. But then when we actually like compared that with the amount of labor that it took to grow these crops, high tunnel cucumbers, high tunnel tomatoes suddenly became actually a lot less profitable than growing squash, melons, kale, especially. So that's really just a note that your labor does really matter. Eric, who co-teaches this high tunnel course with me, um, put together like a little summary of the economics of his high tunnel at his farm. So he has a 30 by 96-foot high tunnel up in Aiken, Minnesota, and it's a pretty mixed vegetable high tunnel. So he's up in Aiken. He's not in the cities where he could grow a whole high tunnel full of tomatoes and have a market for those tomatoes and a whole high tunnel full of cucumbers. He's mostly selling at farmers markets. And so he's growing quite a range of things in that high tunnel. So his initial high tunnel, once he calculated the cost of the tunnel, the expense to assemble it, was about $11,000. The labor and marketing are just over $2,000, and then some overhead expenses. And basically in 2022, his total income from that tunnel was almost $13,000. And then when he included his costs in there, his annual return was just over $8,000. So if we're comparing this to field crops, that's a lot of money from a single tunnel. And again, it's a lot of labor, but it's a really nice way to grow a lot in a small space. So that's just one farm, but it's a snapshot of what the high tunnel economics could look like on a year-to-year basis. All right, so let's do that kind of snapshot throughout the season of what we might expect, what we could grow, what the challenges might be over the course of a year. And before I jump in and tell people like what to grow in different seasons, the first just kind of basic set of guidelines are don't grow anything in your high tunnel or on your farm if you don't know what the market will be. We talked about this a lot in the crop planning class. Unfortunately, my team gets a lot of calls in August with people who have a lot of produce and know where to sell it. And so the best guidance we can give is grow what you have a market for. High tunnels are a high value space, and so you want to make sure you're growing things that are profitable specifically in that space. It does not make sense to grow a watermelon in a high tunnel. They're too big, they take up too much space, they're really slow growing. Instead, there are kind of two classes of things that we can successfully grow in high tunnels. One is things that are fast growing that you can harvest multiple times. So that would be like lettuce, spinach, different greens where you can take multiple cuts. They grow quickly. You're really using that space efficiently. And especially in the shoulder seasons, those crops that can handle a little bit of cold, or crops where you're really utilizing that vertical space. So your tomatoes that are growing really, really tall and your cucumbers that are growing really, really tall, where that small footprint of your high tunnel is kind of extended by that vertical space. Especially in the summer, it's really important to choose crops and varieties that can handle a lot of heat. And we also want to rotate. So if we grow tomatoes in the high tunnel every single year, we will inevitably have like major soil-borne disease problems. And so that might look like kind of rotating within that space, like the front and the back of the high tunnel. For a lot of growers, that looks like eventually having multiple high tunnels where you can rotate between the tunnels. All right, so early spring. This is the most underutilized time for high tunnel production. And it's also the time that can really make or break your profitability. So there's a study of 12 novice high tunnel growers in Michigan where the authors, I think it's Waldman, found that taking advantage of the spring, like really made or broke made or broke people's profitability. So I can now tell you, like when we did this 100 Farms project in 2023, most of the high tunnels were completely bare in the spring. And that is the time when they like really benefit us the most. But the challenge of the spring is the soil's a lot warmer than outside. The ambient air tends to be a lot warmer, but a high tunnel will not necessarily protect you from a hard frost. I frequently see people, unfortunately, thinking like, oh, it's the high tunnel, so I'm going to move my tomatoes out there in like early May. And then they get a hard frost and the tomatoes don't make it. So spring is really for um, the crops that can handle a little bit of cold. And the opportunity here is we're having these really wet springs where it's hard to get into the field. Having a high tunnel gives you something to bring to the market, something to put in your CSA boxes. It gives you a really early start on some of those cool crops like peas, greens, carrots, beets. And a lot of people just have more time in the spring. They're not as busy as the summer. And so, again, it's a way to kind of level out your labor and your income over a longer period of time. So, fast growing, cold tolerant crops are really the way to go. This is a high tunnel at Whitewater Gardens in Altura. And this I took during the 100 Farms project because it was such a nice breath of fresh air. I was in all these empty high tunnels. And then I went to their farm in April, and this is what it looked like. They had this beautiful high tunnel full of greens. So things like arugula, spinach, mustards, baby leaf lettuce, any leafy greens are a great fit for this time period. Carrots, beets, broccolini. You want to make sure you're choosing varieties that are fast. Like a 50-day carrot is going to be a better choice than a 70-day carrot, just because you really want to get your high tunnel kind of opened up for your summer crops in time. Often you will want to supplement with row cover. So that was the photo on the screen before for those really, really cold nights if they do come. So in the summer, there are some challenges to a high tunnel, actually. So as much as heat-loving crops do like heat, they don't like to be that hot, and a high tunnel can easily become too hot, especially in like July and August. There are certain insects that really thrive in high tunnels. So some of the insects that we deal with in the field, we don't really have to think about in a high tunnel, but those small, soft-bodied insects like aphids, white flies, thrips, they love a high tunnel. The good news is we have some different tools. So exclusion, this is a high tunnel on the bottom from Food Farm up in Carlton where they actually have insect netting all around the high tunnel. There's a trade-off there with ventilation, but it's a way to keep cucumber beetles out of the tunnel. We also can use biocontrol more readily in a high tunnel because it's a more contained space. Certain diseases thrive, certain are less abundant. And I think the big challenge for summer is, again, just like balancing labor with the rest of the farm. And here are some photos on top of plants that got sunburnt or just too hot. So heat tolerant crops that are good for summer: tomatoes, peppers, eggplants, cucumbers. Growers have had, not a lot of people are doing day neutral strawberries, but the people who are having a lot of success with them. Sweet potatoes, ginger, those more heat loving crops. These can all be a really great fit for the summer. As we move into fall, the challenges can be one, just that like people are still really busy. I think a lot of farmers are really burnt out by fall. You're tired and you're ready for the season to end. And the idea of like continuing with a new thing is not always exciting. So some opportunities. Fall weather can be a bit unpredictable, but we certainly have had really wet falls where, again, like having that tunnel gives you a drier space to grow things. For those summer crops, continuing to grow them into the fall can give you a few weeks, if not like a month or more, of growing time. So your tomatoes, instead of being done at the first frost outside in early September, can often make it quite a few weeks further in a high tunnel. And then for people who do like agritourism stuff, we've seen a huge boom in agritourism in Minnesota in the fall. Having a high tunnel might allow you to have like a lot of greens and other things in your farm store a lot later into the fall, if that's something that you do to kind of add some more income to that agritourism business. So fall crops, similar to spring, there's always a trade-off here if you're growing summer crops of like when you pull out your summer crops to plant new fall crops. Um, but there are a lot of really fast growing greens that can be a good fit for fall that take like 3 to 5 weeks to harvest. Some people will even do, if there's space in the high tunnel, to plant a little earlier, things like carrots and beets and peas. Generally, you want to aim to harvest by late October, early November. At that point, it's just too dark and your plants are not going to keep growing, even if it's warm in there. Just like the spring, you might need to supplement with row cover on cold nights. And this brings us to this sort of other set of crops, which are our winter crops. So the winter crops are actually fall crops that you plant in the fall and you harvest in the winter. And more people are doing this. So winter is tough in general. There's snow on your tunnel, it's dark, and so even if it's warm, crops don't grow a whole lot. Um, some people don't have easy market access in the winter, like your local farmers market shut down. Maybe you don't have enough for a whole CSA in the winter. Um, but a lot of people have found really great markets in the winter, and it's allowed them to expand their market access throughout the rest of the year. People tend to have more time in the winter too. So that's kind of nice. So basically, we can grow greens in unheated high tunnels in Minnesota. Spinach is the simplest green to grow, but there are some other really hardy greens. And basically, what you do is 8 weeks before this Persephone period, so it's this period of darkness, basically from November 1st to February, we are going to plant 8 weeks before that. So generally, that looks like early September in Minnesota. So this is that trade-off where like it maybe doesn't make sense to pull your tomatoes out to plant spinach, but maybe you're growing cucumbers this year and they're full of powdery mildew and they're really winding down by September. Planting spinach can be a great way to get another crop in that tunnel. So you would generally harvest then. So your plants start to grow, they kind of go dormant for that period from November to February. And then as the light starts to come back, they start growing again, and people can get usually 2 cuts of spinach, sometimes 3 from their high tunnels in February and March. And that winter spinach is like the best spinach you've ever tasted. The cold makes the stems really sweet. And you can do this in an unheated high tunnel. It does require some additional row cover, but I think this is something that's really underutilized. And if you're not growing winter spinach, you can always plant a cover crop in your high tunnel too. So we see in tunnels that are left empty over the winter, the soil gets really dry, which is not great for a lot of reasons. And so it's always good to keep a cover crop in there if your soil is just going to be bare for the winter. And then like mix it up every year. So we want to have that rotation. So this is just kind of an example where maybe the first year you've got spring greens, followed by tomatoes, and then a cover crop. The second year you do spring greens, followed by cucumbers, and then there's time to plant winter spinach. So you plant your spinach. You might still get a couple things planted in that really short spring window, and maybe you plant day neutral strawberries the next year. This is not prescriptive, just an example of what it could look like to rotate your crops. And then this is a slide from Eric again. So again, a small farm in northern Minnesota. He's got a whole mix of things in the high tunnel. He does spinach, loose leaf lettuce, head lettuce in the spring, tomatoes, peppers, cucumbers in the summer, kind of a mix of radishes, herbs, lettuce in the fall, and then he'll do overwintering spinach or lettuce some winters. And then the final thing I'll mention is it's becoming increasingly common to grow fruit in high tunnels as well. There are folks growing raspberries and blackberries. You definitely want to do fall bearing. The summer bearing don't work well in high tunnels. It's just too hot in the summer for them. But the fall can get you a really nice extended season of berry production. Day neutral strawberries. So those are all kind of exciting things to think about as well. And then we're going to finish with a really brief discussion about funding opportunities. And there are some NRCS people on the call who can say more about this than I can. So all I'm going to say, and then I did not ask you to present, but Carl, since you're here, or Russell, since you're here, feel free to say something. But the NRCS EQIP program does provide funding for high tunnels. It's always good to reach out early. Um, and in addition to tunnels, they provide funding for all kinds of great conservation initiatives. They provide really good technical assistance. Carl or Russell, do you want to say anything else about that?
Sure. Well, I'll let Russ say a lot more details. He's a NRCS experienced person for years and is a grower. Excuse me. I wanted to touch back to your very first thing you said about high tunnels are not for everybody. And anecdotally, NRCS staff have told me that some of the ones we've given out are now sit empty and or haven't even been put up yet. So to your point, know what you're getting into. And I don't know if you'd agree, but I like to say if you've never grown anything, you probably don't want to start with a high tunnel.
Yeah.
And Russ, you can add to that. We went to his place and mentioned that it just speeds everything up and makes everything harder and more difficult. Yes, you can make more money, but nothing good comes easy, eh? Um, and then I'll just add, um, NRCS is still there. I know the federal government has been more than upheaval lately. And EQIP is still there. High tunnels are still there. If you're not familiar with NRCS, my simple message is get to know who is in your county office, give them a call, figure out who's the person to work with, and have them come out to your place and look around. In NRCS lingo, that's technical assistance. I mean, you don't have to sign up for anything, but if you want a high tunnel, uh, get all signed up with the paperwork, get to know the person, develop a relationship, and it isn't going to happen right away. You got to really plan ahead. It's competitive. A lot of people sign up. If you don't get it the first year, that's not surprising. So get to know your folks, have them come out, and have other people come out. What I say to any grower, invite anybody and everybody, your farm staff, SWCD, whoever it might be. But NRCS is still available for everybody. It and I think Russ, you probably had a lot more to say about some of those details I mentioned. Not to put you on the spot.
I won't say much more. Yeah, Carl, I think you covered it well, and Natalie, you're covering it well too. I for NRCS as far as that goes, yeah, just start that relationship if you haven't already. Stop in a local office. Let come in with some goals. Come in with some plans. It might not just be high tunnels, but what are your farm plans? Like there might be some other things we can look at, micro irrigation or other types of projects. And some things are eligible, some things are not. So and it might take multiple years, but yeah, we're here to help. So that's all I had to add.
Okay, thanks. And maybe Carl, you inspired me to say, I think, on that idea of like, don't let this be like the first thing you do, like get some experience first. I think there's a lot of high tunnels in Minnesota now. There are over 1,000 that NRCS has funded and plenty more that NRCS hasn't funded. It can be so helpful to learn from another farmer. And so like reach out to farmers in your area and see if you could do a work share where you just work for like a few hours a week, maybe in exchange for some food, or maybe they pay you, or maybe you volunteer. But just like if you can, try to get some hands-on experience in a high tunnel before you really commit to doing it for yourself. And I think that like that is good advice for farming in general. It's always good to work with somebody else who has some experience before you get started. There are some other funding sources that are worth mentioning. These are not going to fund your whole high tunnel. But I know that people have used some of these to fund a caterpillar tunnel, or more commonly, people will use funding sources like the Lake Winds Organic Field Fund, the Mill City Next Stage Grant. MDA has had some preparing for extreme weather grants over the last few years. This year, Regional Sustainable Development Partnerships had Farmer Climate Action Funds, and they may have those again in the future. So people have used some of these programs to essentially supplement existing high tunnels. So growers who didn't have like electrical hookups got some solar well pumps that allowed them to irrigate their high tunnels using solar power. People have used these grants to invest in high tunnel automation. So like roll up like a controller that kind of tracks temperature and humidity and automatically opens vents and rolls up sides to keep conditions right in the high tunnel. So these are things to think about in general for funding farm projects, but to kind of supplement NRCS funding or whatever else you're doing to fund a high tunnel. And then I did just want to mention the course again. So if you're super excited about high tunnels, you want to do a deep dive, we have like 3 spots left in our class that's starting next week. It meets every Tuesday at noon on Zoom. It is $75 to participate, but if you finish, we have a grant from the USDA's OREI, Organic Research and Education Initiative, where if you finish the course and you come up with a high tunnel plan, you actually get $300 to implement that plan. So it costs negative money if you finish the class. And this class really is for people who like already have a high tunnel or are like ready to build a high tunnel. It's a little in depth if you're still at the point of like thinking about a high tunnel. And with that, we have a few minutes left for questions. I will stop sharing. And I think we forgot last week, so we're gonna launch like a little evaluation poll that's gonna pop right up on your screen. And while you fill that out, we can do some Q&A. So you can write in the chat if you want to. You can just like unmute and ask a question or share an experience.
Can people outside Minnesota sign up for your class?
Yeah.
Okay.
If you're like in Louisiana, I might not. But if you're in a place with a relatively similar climate, yeah,
Wisconsin.
Totally. Yeah.
Thank you.
And I'll say if you're near the Twin Cities, so the class formally happens online, and then in the summer, we have a high tunnel on campus, on St. Paul campus, that we basically just get to like play with. And so we're going to do a bunch of hands-on field days in that high tunnel this summer, and those are going to be free and open to the public. So you can come and learn how to prune and trellis and do bed flipping and a bunch of different like high tunnel skills. So keep an eye out for those field days as well. Any other questions?
Where do I register for this class? For the high tunnel class?
Here, I will put my screen back up again. And so this link right here, oops, z.umn.edu/high tunnel course will take you to the registration page.
Oh, thank you.
So Maria asked, are there people out there that are digging to the bottom of their high tunnel house to get the soil? Oh, I just lost it. Gotta scroll back up. Down below the frost line and grow bigger things like trees? Good question. So they sort of, there's like one guy who's growing peaches in Minnesota. His name's Dan Shield. He's up by Taylor's Falls. He does a lot of talks about it, so I don't want to speak too much for him. I think it is like a high tunnel is already really labor intensive. And to grow something that doesn't necessarily want to grow in Minnesota in your high tunnel is like, and a long-lived perennial specifically, is like that much more labor and resource intensive. I think it's very cool. I don't know that there's enough evidence to say that I would recommend that other people do it necessarily, or that it's like a commercially viable enterprise. Um, so sort of. I guess a slightly different twist on that is there certainly are people who like bury insulation along the edges of their tunnel if they're really committed to winter growing. Um, there's a lot of people interested in climate batteries, they're called. That term is not very descriptive. I don't know why they're called that, but basically where you would kind of dig down and bury a bunch of tubing, and then you would have fans. And so the air down in the soil profile stays warmer, and it's kind of this like passive way of keeping your tunnel warm through the winter. I think like the deep winter greenhouses sort of lean on that model, and there's more and more people like interested in bridging the gap between how we keep deep winter greenhouses warm and how we might keep high tunnels warm. So I think it's something people are thinking about, but it's still not like we don't have a lot of answers yet. Pat's wondering, what do they call the smaller 4-foot 1-row hoops? So those are called low tunnels. They're questionably useful. So the low tunnels, there's a photo in one of these slides like this. So within a high tunnel, they can be useful if you're like trying to get your greens through the winter. If you're only using a low tunnel outside, it's a lot of work to set them up. And they don't provide a ton of frost protection. I was just doing a project this fall with a farmer who's growing West African crops in Minnesota. And we set these up on a couple of different crops. There has to be quite a bit of airspace. So if it's a tall crop, so in this case, like we had it on bitter leaf, where it was like almost the size of between the size of like a pepper and a tomato outside, and there wasn't a lot of airflow, it did not get us through a single frost. For something that was really low growing, so like a leafy green, it did provide some frost protection. It only gave like a couple of extra weeks of like fall survival. And I think it's going to really depend on the farm whether the labor of setting them up and taking them down is worth that like little bit of extra frost protection you get. But in the case of winter spinach, it's pretty necessary to have both systems in an unheated high tunnel. And the hoops really help. Like you can just put down like a blanket of row cover, but you have to like move it off and on every day to prevent too much moisture buildup, and it gets really dirty. And so the hoops really help with that moisture management. All right, any final questions? All right, well, if not, we can wrap up a couple minutes early. Thanks, everybody. Next week, we'll run back to our schedule. Next week is about pumpkins. Yeah, so Marissa's going to go through the whole season of pumpkins and all the different things we have to do to manage weeds, diseases, and insects in pumpkins throughout the growing season. So hopefully see some of you next week. Have a good rest of your day.